Today, I have the pleasure of speaking with Jillian Faldmo. She is a Biofield Tuning practitioner and has spent the last 10 years working alongside the founder of Biofield Tuning, Eileen Cusick, to transform the lives of people all over the world. In this talk, Jillian discusses what the biofield is, why biofield tuning is so accurate and so precise as far as its ability to recode your biological energetic field and change your physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual life. She also dives into how you as a beginner can start implementing biofield tuning in your own life and experience its transformative potential. Jillian, I am so excited to have you here today. We're going to be talking about biofield tuning, which is your area of expertise. And I am very excited to have you dive into that in just a minute here. But this has really come up for me many times over the last little while. So I think that this conversation and this episode is, for me personally, happening at a very timely moment. But I have a little bit of experience with biofield tuning just from the perspective of, one, I have some tuning forks that I need to learn how to use. And my intention in buying those was to actually do the course. And then life just kind of came up for me. So it's still on my list of things that I would like to do. But I also was, I guess I should say, a recipient of a session, like a practitioner had done a session for me. And she was actually on the other side of the world. She was in Australia and did this remote session with me. And it was so powerful as far as a modality and something that I felt an immediate effect from. And actually, she was able to find things in my field, in my biofield, that I had not told her about. So she kind of came to realize that there were certain things that had happened in my past that were maybe responsible for some of the physical things I was experiencing. And in that experience, I just really, one, had a curiosity about the whole practice of biofield tuning, and two, a respect for it, because my own experience was that it was really powerful. So before we dive into what biofield tuning is exactly, which we will get to, and I'll let you explain that, do you want to just share a little bit about yourself and how you got into this work and how you've developed this practice?
Sure. I mean, I can say that I had a similar experience as you did, where I was signed up for a session with actually the founder, Eileen Cusick, before she had, a whole training program. But I kind of went in with like, cool, I want to check this out. I'm pretty curious. I've heard some neat things. And I was just blown away at how accurate, she was able to interpret the sounds of the tuning forks as they interacted with my body and field. We'll get into kind of how this works, with the timeline of a person's life, but how she was able to really pinpoint certain ages in my life that were impactful. They were stressful, but impactful to my patterns then, and how just that was it was validating. Number one, I was like, oh my gosh, somebody's here witnessing my mind, and my memories and those experiences. And two, like, it was just like the way that I felt after that session was just incredible. I had never experienced anything like that. Whereas like we could essentially wipe away years of anxiety with just one session. And I like from then on, I was like, oh my gosh, I'm sold. So at that time I was a nurse, a registered nurse, working in the medical field. I was really into holistic nursing, but I wasn't really satisfied with being a nurse, in the conventional medical system. I really wanted to branch off and do something on my own to really serve people and help people and find something that was fulfilling and meaningful. And after so many biofield tuning sessions, I was like, I think this is it. And so eventually I ended up leaving nursing altogether and started a biofield tuning practice and was teaching it all over the world. And here we are today. We're teaching a lot online now with,
Yeah.
the pandemic too. So
And so you currently work with Eileen. Like I know you started initially receiving some sessions from her, but now you're working with Eileen and actually teaching how to do the biofield tuning as well as how to build a practice around it for people who want to become practitioners, correct?
yeah, that's right. I started off as her client. Then I took her trainings. It took a few years for me to be like, okay, I think I can exit out of nursing and like all, kind of exit the peer reviewed things and into this into this realm where it's benefiting me. It's benefiting, the people around me. I'm going to train in it. Did the training. Soon after that, we were living in the same town. And I started apprenticing with her while she was writing her book, Tuning the Human Biofield, and then started assisting with trainings with her and then teaching with her, helped her to broaden and scale the school. And then once the pandemic hit, I helped to develop the online training as well. And yeah, one of the gaps that I saw with our practitioners, we're teaching people the skills of biofield tuning, but there's a whole other skill set to learn as far as becoming an entrepreneur, right? And like having your own practice. It's not just about hanging up a
Yeah.
shingle or creating a website. Like there's some skill in how you talk about what you do and meeting people and learning the online marketing world and things like that. So yeah, I started helping people with that, and I have a coaching practice doing that where I integrate coaching and biofield tuning because it is a skill set to learn how to be an entrepreneur. And there's strategy involved, but a lot of it has to do with mindset too, and the subconscious blocks that are getting in the way of us kind of putting ourselves out there, so to speak. A lot of us go into this work wanting to heal and wanting to help and serve. But when it comes to like putting ourselves on stage or, that's kind of an exaggeration, but a lot of fear comes up. And there are some good reasons for that.
Right. Yeah, no, that's a huge missing piece. I mean, even I'll speak from my personal experience in dentistry as an example. And I think in a lot of healthcare fields or even, these industries where you go into them wanting to serve, the entrepreneurial aspect or that part of the practice that requires that you build some skills around business is definitely lacking. So it's very cool, very, very necessary
Yeah.
thing that somebody like yourself is in this space, giving some structure or substance to the actual, the business of, so to speak, of building a practice that is grounded in holistic healing.
Right.
Could you go into a little bit about what biofield tuning actually is? Like, what does that mean for somebody who is new to this and maybe hasn't heard of this as a form of healing or therapy of any kind?
Sure. So a broad way to put it is a sound therapy tool. So we use tuning forks for targeted nervous system relaxation. And like I said, that's a really broad way to put it. But essentially, what we're doing is we're working in the biofield, which is the scientific term coined by the NIH back in, I don't know when that was, 1990 or something like that. But the aura, it's the same thing, the human energy field. And we're locating areas in the biofield where there's some sort of tension or stagnation or resistance. So essentially, we want our energy to be running through our center, right? If you think of us like batteries, we have potential, running through us. We have electrolytes, and we want that energy to just be, centered, aligned, but with stress, with traumatic situations in our lives, we can actually not only like emit energy, like kind of leak energy, but it can get trapped in our biofields. And so we're using the sound of the tuning forks like little sonar detectors, and we're listening for the tones, right? So the tones of the tuning forks normally will produce a wide range of undertones and midtones and overtones. And when we're working in someone's biofield, some of those tones at times will drop out. And that will mean that we've encountered some sort of tension or misalignment or sort of energy flow disruption. And we're working with the properties of resonance and entrainment when we're using tuning forks. So the tuning fork is going to resonate with that resistance. And then the consistent and coherent input of the tuning fork is going to gently entrain that pattern and that energy back into flow. And so people often report feeling like they have more energy after a session. They often report having more light, like they feel lighter because that energy is light, right? That we're made up of light and that energy is light. So they have more light in them. They feel lighter. They feel more relaxed and at ease. They're less they're less likely to respond to stressors in the ways that they used to. So I also like to say, when people ask me what I do, I help people change the way that they respond to stress, because we really are doing that, right? When we have more energy available to us, we also have more choice in how we use that energy. When we're running on empty and our batteries are so low, we can be so quick to just default to some knee-jerk reactions, like yelling or freezing. Go into that fight, flight, freeze, fawn response
Right.
pretty easily.
And so just to expand on that a little bit, everybody has a biofield. This is something that is like inherent to being human. And we each have a unique biofield. And what you're doing with the biofield tuning is you're trying to find or you're finding, if there are any present areas where there is a lack of or a disturbance in the coherence of that field that somebody's emitting.
Yeah, and that often will correspond to some sort of physical issue too. So you could probably see behind me, we have a map. Just like we have a human anatomy, like within our bodies, we each have, a brain in a certain region and our heart in a certain region. And right, we have an emotional storage in our anatomy. So off the left side of the heart, for example, relates to patterns and experiences that are related to sadness, grief, and loss. The right hip, for example, relates to busyness, overdoing, overthinking. So if a pattern has been kind of hanging out there for a long time in the field, energy stuck in the field, it's drawing energy away from the body. And when energy is drawn away for so long, it ends up a chronic pattern. It can lead to disruption in the body itself. Like, so many people have had right hip replacements, or, a lot of us healers, wellness, practitioners, we have right shoulder pain. Right shoulder relates to over accommodating for other people, saying yes when we mean no. A really common one.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Yeah.
And so when you're working with somebody, and I've tried to do this myself, just, from a very untrained place, but trying to hear or trying to sense an incoherence, like even in myself when I would use a tuning fork. What does that sound like to you? How are you picking that up when you're reading somebody's field? And another question I'll add on to that is, could you go into a little bit, what is the expanse of a biofield? So how far out is somebody's biofield actually emitting energy beyond their physical body?
So in biofield tuning, generally, well, on average, I think most people's biofields are about 5 to 6 feet away. That can change, if someone's feeling really depleted, or if they're actively, battling some sort of illness like the flu, their biofield can kind of contract, right? And that's like an energy conservation type of thing that we do, like a mechanism. And then the opposite, if someone's feeling like really expanded and great, and they're just like, oh my gosh, loving life, their biofield might be further out, like more like 12 feet, or that's pretty far out. But in biofield tuning, we have a process that if somebody's field is contracted, of helping that to relax and expand. It's in our opening sequence, and it involves the central channel, which is the bidirectional flow that runs through the center of our body, through our energy centers and our chakras. We work particularly with the Earth Star and Sun Star to relax and expand those. Sometimes those can shrink in towards the body, and that also contracts our field. So we work on expanding that. And then in a session, we aim with our intention to have the field about 5 to 6 feet, just so it's workable. Because I don't know how to explain that, but with our intention, we can, shift energy in all kinds of ways. It's really hard to measure how we do that, but we can. And then you asked me about how we are perceiving the information, right? So one of the things the first thing we really pay attention to is our breath. What happens? What's our first response when we're stressed? We hold our breath, right? Or our breath becomes shallow. And so when we're working in somebody's field, the tuning fork is like a needle on an album broadcasting information. And so when we're in an area of resistance or charge or stress in the field, that information's being broadcasted. And one of the first things we do as practitioners in that field is hold our breath. And so we really pay attention to the breath the entire time. And we notice, am I holding my breath? Oh, okay, this might be something here. And we'll take a deep breath to discharge that energy and information, so we're not holding it. And then we tune in a little bit more. What's going on here? We can feel with our fingertips. So we hold the fork with our thumb on it, and you can really feel the vibrations. And you can feel if that vibration is changing. Is it getting really fast? Is it getting slow and dropping out? Is the fork itself feeling kind of heavy and like it just wants to fall to the floor? And then, paying attention to how is it moving in the field? Is it stopping, right? And so we're really just in this process of we say deep listening, but it's really deep sensing, because we're using all of our senses. We're using our breath, our fingertips. We're paying attention to our body. Is the fork wanting to move or not? Like, can I move it through the field? But also we might have different sensations in our body too, as we, encounter information. We might feel really sad out of nowhere, or we might feel anxiety in our own bodies. Our left knee might twinge. And so it's all things to pay attention to. And then, of course, we tell our students, they often expect the first thing that they're going to pick up on is the sound of the forks. It's really often the last for a lot of people. Not everybody. Like, some students are really like their primary, we call them pathways of information. Their primary pathway of information is the hearing. And you can hear if there's more overtones, like that might be like alarm, fear, panic, anxiety, or if there's more undertones, that might represent depression, sadness, exhaustion, fatigue, or if there's kind of like a mix between the two. But oftentimes that's the one that it's like, I tell students that it's like learning a new language. You can read the books, you can have someone like tutor you in a new language, but until you're plopped in the middle of a foreign country and immersed in it in the day-to-day for months and months, you won't become fluent in it. So it takes time to really be able to interpret the emotions from the sounds, but really just paying attention to like, what's happening in my breath? Can I move the fork? Can I not? And just staying with that can create really profound change and results for somebody, for a client.
And you're seeing that after, and in my experience was after one session, I noticed a difference, but you're also experiencing that and you have clients experience, whether they know exactly what you helped to shift, that they can sense that there's some difference in their field, like in their level of energy, or maybe
Yeah.
like a very physical ailment isn't feeling so physical anymore. Like there are almost immediate changes.
Yep. Yeah, we try to set people up with the expectation, like, some really profound things do happen in biofield tuning sessions. It like there's a reason it's caught on so much. I think we have like, I mean, a couple thousand. Well, I'm actually not sure about the numbers right now, but people are catching on to it more and more. I started this work 10 years ago, like actually practicing it. And when someone would ask me what I do, and I talked about biofield tuning, nobody had any clue. But now, like I was just at a dinner on Sunday and I told somebody I, do biofield tuning. She was like, "Oh my gosh, I heard of that. I was looking into the training." And I was like, "No way." Like that's happening more and more and more. It's because, people are talking about it in a way that's like, "Oh my gosh, I tried this thing and the results were phenomenal." Like, people will say, "I've been in
Mhm.
years and years of therapy and I had one biofield tuning session and just had the most incredible like revelation and change in the way that I think about things and the way that I feel." So I call biofield tuning a consciousness hacking tool because we're kind of doing that. Like it's like we're going
Right.
into the mind and the body and just like repatterning so quickly.
Yeah, and you were mentioning earlier just the precision or what you noticed in your own experience as a client. And I found the same thing. Like you were able to narrow down, in some cases, an age or like a specific age range when something might have happened. If it was related to your mother or your father or grandmother or grandfather, how intense it could have been, like all of these things that it's almost like I'll throw out the word like intuitively or psychically picking up information through your ability to sense what's happening in the person's field. And I know that there's probably a lot of ways that we could describe what's happening in that, but how would you describe what it is that you're sensing and how it is that you can really accurately sort of, pick things out in somebody's life that they haven't told you about?
Yeah, so there's kind of like there's two parts to that answer. So the first part is really basic. Like we have the biofield anatomy map and the way that we like anybody like even someone who's just learning this today can pick up on a specific age and emotion just from using the map. So the biofield is timelined in nature is what Eileen Cusick discovered, and she has a whole hypothesis about it. But as we generate information throughout our lives, that information moves away from us, sort of like
Right.
rings of a tree. So the furthest away from us, at the very edge of our biofields, that's the earliest information. So conception, gestation, birth, early, precognitive years, like under 3, that's all way out there. And then as we move through the field and get closer to the body, that's more recent information. So halfway through somebody's field would be halfway
Mhm.
through their lives. So someone who's 50 years old, halfway would be 25 years old. And so as we call it combing, as we're combing through the field with the tuning fork, wherever we feel like we're wanting, the fork isn't wanting to move or we're holding our breath, we kind of figure out where we are in that timeline. I got to stop saying kind of. We figure out where we are in that timeline. And or some people will use a ruler or something and they have the field in half, segment it in half, and then segment it into quarters to figure out, the those ages. And then where the fork is, they'll go, okay, I'm like in that first quarter of life, so first quarter is what, 12 and a half for someone who's 50, but we're like kind of in the beginning. Okay, 5 years old. We're probably around 5 years old Where in the left heart, that relates or can relate to sadness, grief, loss, depression. Does anything come to mind for you? Or what comes to mind? Or what are you noticing? And we can just let the story unfold with, the client there who's on the table, and, they can share their story. So that's kind of like the beginner approach, is just following the map. And then the second answer to that question of how like the practitioner can get really specific, like, oh, this feels related to mom or dad, or wow, this feels like it was, you moved away, for there was instability. It feels like maybe there was a move or something. That just comes from trusting your senses. Just really like, we talked about deep listening, so deep sensing, trusting the information that's coming. So you're listening to the sound, you're noticing how it makes you feel. Like, and when you get really like attuned to different emotions, it's a little bit easier. So it's like the more emotional awareness a practitioner has, the easier it is to decipher, how am I feeling? Like, sure, sad, but what kind of sadness is this? Is it despair? Is it loss of hope? Is it, heartbreak? And then also trusting what comes in. Eileen calls it the mail slot. So, it's, kind of like the Harry Potter when a letter comes in. What does the letter have to say, right? But it's like in our own bodies and minds of like where, yes, some of it is intuition and some of it is just different kind, it's vibrational information. So it can come through in like a song you have in your head. And if it just won't leave, you're like, okay, maybe I should talk about this song that's in my head because I think it's relevant to the person on the table. And oftentimes you share it with the person on the table and they're like, oh my gosh, I used to love that song. We sang it every night like before bed, or, something like that. So yeah, it's really, I think this work, what I tell my students is a lot of it is about trusting yourself. And we've been so disconnected in our society from trusting ourselves that when we do have some sort of inkling or information that just sort of drops in, we're quick to dismiss it and go, no, I'm just making that up. That's not true. Or, maybe I should consult with, this authority to see if this is right. And so, it's a beautiful practice, not only the work itself, but also how you apply it to your life after that of, can I trust myself? Of course I can.
Yeah, it sounds like it like from a personal, as a practitioner, from a personal standpoint, you get to really engage in that practice of just developing your own sense of trust in yourself, in your intuition, and in, like we live in a vibrational reality and we are so conditioned to look at reality as this very materialistic sense of existence, and you're operating in the realm of vibration and sensing. And I think it just takes the experience that we kind of have reduced down to its densest form into like the nuanced, more beautiful parts of sensing our experience. And so I think because you're doing that all the time,
Yes.
like there's like this practice that you get as a practitioner in doing that as well.
Yeah, it's wonderful. And I hear students all the time. It's so true. They say, like, ever since I started practicing biofield tuning, my sensitivity level has increased dramatically. And it's because you are paying attention now to the subtle vibrational things around you, and what felt normal to do before, like listen to a certain genre of music or go to like big events with a lot of people, now feels like, whoa. Like I can really feel how this music is affecting me, and like, wow, there's a lot of vibes out there. Eventually you learn how to discern for yourself, right? Of like, okay, I'm gonna change the style of music I'm listening to, or I'm gonna go to this event and I'm gonna make sure that my battery is charged, I'm well cared for, and that I'm practicing, breathing and centering and grounding so that I'm not overcome by other people's,
Hmm.
vibes, basically. Or like we just went to a music festival this weekend and I was like, yep, that's one I'm never going to again. Because of the crowd and the vibe. I was like, no, no, no. Like my stepdaughter wanted to go to that one. I was like, yeah, I love
Yeah.
music festivals. Let's go. I was like, no, we're not ever
Yeah,
doing that
that's
again. Well, I'm
that's
not.
really funny actually, because so do I. I actually really enjoy live music and music festivals. And I have had very similar experiences. Like I've been to some that are amazing and you want to go back and you want to be in that space, and some that
Yeah.
are like,
Yeah.
no, thank you. I'm not coming back here.
You're like, what did
Y-
I just do with
Yeah.
my weekend? Yeah. And so even like people will experience going into a grocery store and just like the fluorescent lights and like, the music playing and the moods of the people. And we're like, whoa. And we practice the breath and we practice some breath work in biofield tuning, and it's breathing in through your nose and out through your mouth. And it's a really extended exhale to just help discharge any excess energy so that you're not,
Hmm.
holding on to it, and you can keep your energy
Right.
flow going and yeah, keep your voltage up.
And when you're in so say you're in a public space, you're in a grocery store, you're at a festival, you're in a place with a lot of other people, like energy doesn't go away. Are you sensing people's biofields even though you're out of the context of being a practitioner for a client? Like, are you still just as sensitive to or aware of the fields of the people around you?
I think I used to be more when I was first, just immersing myself in this work. It was very easy to just kind of get curious and go like, what's going on for this person? And then I eventually learned that that was a little invasive and like to turn it off. So you can, I think most people, I don't want to speak for everybody. I can kind of turn it off and on. Like if I really wanted to study somebody and look at their biofield and like kind of see what was going on and sense
Mhm.
into, I could, but I'm like, I want to respect people's
Right.
privacy in doing that. And it can just be a little like exhausting. I'm like, I'm just
Yeah.
going to stay, especially in big events, like just stay
Yeah. Yeah.
superficial here.
And when you're working with somebody, so my experience of when I actually had a session, when I was in a session with somebody, it was remote, and the ideas of quantum entanglement and some of the ideas behind that are the reasons that remote healing has, been credited to be successful in other ways. But what would you say to somebody who is curious about how a remote session can work? If we're saying that somebody's biofield is maybe 6 feet away from their body, how is a practitioner able to sense them remotely from across the world, as an example?
So, with intention is the short answer, right? We can intend to work with someone's energy because energy really, even though it's around our bodies physically, when we're working with energy, it is spaceless and timeless, meaning that you can access
Hmm.
energy anywhere, anytime. And as you experienced, even across the world, in different time zones, right? And yeah, I don't know how to explain that. I don't even think I've really tried to figure it out because I've just had so
Yeah.
much clinical experience to be like, I don't need to really know how it works. I just know it works because I have the experience over and
Yeah.
over again with my clients and with myself receiving biofield tuning. But I also, for people with the, curious mind, I think of like our cell phones, right? Of like, I can use this to call
Mhm.
somebody in Australia in another time zone. It's not connected to anything,
Right.
but it still works, right? And it's radio waves and things like that. Somebody could probably explain it, but I'm like, I don't even need to know. I just know it works. It's great. It's an amazing tool. I can call my parents over on the East Coast. I'm on the
Yeah.
West Coast. Yeah, so there's so many things we don't know. We don't know how it works, but we don't know how they work,
Right.
but they do. They do work. We think about remote sessions, like we're accessing, like we basically have our own personal clouds around us, right? Like our cloud storage of information and memories. And it's like getting into a Google Doc together or, something like that. And, working on something together, even though we're in two different
Right.
locations. That's another way to
Yeah,
explain
there's
it.
there's lots of different terms like for how information just exists within the universe. But are you familiar with Rupert Sheldrake at all and his work?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so
Mhm.
he talks a lot about like extensively. He's written books on morphic fields and just the idea that each person and even just ideas themselves or skills or paradigms, like all of these things that sort of make up our reality, including aspects of our personality, they're held in fields, and these fields exist around us, kind of like what we are talking about now with our biofield. And the fields can be strengthened, they can be weakened, but they are also there to tap into, and you can access information from these fields. And he's written a lot about different psi abilities and how these abilities can be obtained and what kind of skills can be drawn from information, floating in these fields, so to speak. But it's just, yet another example of kind of what you said, that we are like these cloud based storage systems, and we have all of this information, and you don't need to be directly connected to things for us to send that information out into the ethers and to be received by somebody. And I think that idea, I would say most people don't ever question how their cell phone works, just to the example you gave. And, when they hear things like biofield tuning or remote healing, it like sends off an alarm bell of skepticism when there are so many things that we don't really understand and work through unseen forces, but work nonetheless. So I just think that that's a really cool analogy that you gave to sort of put into perspective that we have all of this energy within us but also around us, and it's all affiliated with us, and yet it's also there to be tapped into and accessed, just like anything on your Google Drive. As an example, anyone from the world can go into that drive and pull information from it. And I think that we are operate in a way where we're constantly, we're holding and carrying information that if we wanted it to, it can be accessed by somebody elsewhere. And in your case, and with the work you're doing, that allows you to heal or help somebody in a really positive way.
Yep, absolutely. And I will say too, I should say, like a little disclaimer, like part of the ethics, code of ethics in biofield tuning is that we never work on
Mhm.
anybody without their permission, right? So just because we can access somebody's energy and work with it doesn't mean that will do it if we feel like we need to. We get informed consent, either written or verbal, from that person, because it's not very kind or respectful to go and work with someone's
Yeah.
energy and they don't know it or they don't give you permission. Yeah. And just a little bit, yeah, note about skepticism. I think healthy skepticism is good when it comes to, modalities. I was actually a skeptic for the first probably, I don't know, like 9 years. And not that I didn't believe, like, I was like, well, every time I would get a session or do a session, I'd be like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. Like it works. But I would constantly be like, especially if I had a little break in between seeing clients where it had been like, a few days, or I was on vacation for a couple weeks and I didn't do a session. I was like, what am I even doing? Like, is this even
Mhm.
helping people? Like, I'm just waving a tuning fork around somebody's body. Sometimes the body's not even here, and I'm just waving a tuning fork around the air. And is this even, what am I doing? Like, why did I leave my nursing career? And then I'd get into a session and be helping somebody, and I was like, oh yeah, right, this does work. Like they're like totally like resonating with what the information I'm giving them. They're feeling things, they're saying how much better they feel. Okay. So now I've learned to quiet that down and just be like, yeah, okay, this does work. I don't have
Yeah.
to understand it. I've had plenty of, like I said, clinical experience to just be okay with not knowing
Mhm.
exactly how it works.
Yeah, and I think that that just speaks to how strongly we are programmed to look at this kind of stuff, like anything that is like purely unseen, energetically based, and almost discredit it immediately. Like we're never really taught to explore these things. We're not certainly not taught how they work. And if anything, most of us, you were a nurse, I went to dental school. Most of us who went into science and or medicine or healthcare of some kind were actually taught to actively discredit these things. And that, if you met somebody or heard of somebody working with these types of modalities and working with energy or holistic therapies, that they were, quacks or they were nuts. And so I think it just speaks to, how strongly those ideas are ingrained in us. And it doesn't even, it takes so much time and a lot of like, real world proof to sort of undo that level of programming. And so I just think what you said earlier is really, really cool that, this is resonating for people. And even if they don't understand how it works, it's, they're hearing about it or they know somebody who has had such positive experiences that they're curious about it. And, now you have all of these online classes that people are taking. And it is really exciting that I think we're now in this place within health and medicine and healthcare and just healing in general, where people are realizing that the systems that most of us have been in and find ourselves in currently aren't actually here to support real healing. They're here to, give you a symptom and then maybe, quelch that symptom if that even happens. But real healing isn't really taking place in these, larger systems in the medical system. Like most medical practitioners are trained to identify disease, identify symptoms, and then do something to mediate those symptoms versus actually healing. So I think we're in a new space now where people are looking for something different because there's a lot going on. People have a lot going on, and I think, there is this genuine searching for now therapies or modalities that can really get to a place of making people feel better because they're truly healing.
Absolutely. And I think a lot of it really stems from our emotions. I see energy and emotions as sort of the same thing. I mean, energy can have no emotion at all attached to it, of course. But when I'm working with energy in the biofield tuning, sense, a lot of it is unprocessed
Right.
emotions, right? And I just like we were never taught to explore the world of energy, and we were never taught how to process emotion. And that's where energy can get really stuck. Emotion is energy in motion. And what we have been taught is to suppress it, resist it, avoid it at all costs. Like
Mhm.
big boys don't cry and good girls don't get mad, right? And we're all adults, and we've got these ailments and these patterns where we're like, I can't figure this out. I tried this, I tried diet, I tried exercise, I tried whatever the thing is. I tried physical therapy, acupuncture, but I really think that the emotional processing is the
Mhm.
missing piece. And so in biofield tuning, what that looks like is acknowledging, number one, what the emotion is, the memory, acknowledging what that is, And even just that acknowledgement
Mm-hmm.
creates some movement in the field and adds more flow. And then I like to teach people too, like, okay, now that we've like, you know, spruced up your biofield, we've tuned you up. Now here's what emotional processing looks like is like, you know, notice where it is in your body. If you feel yourself getting angry or upset or whatever, just start by locating the emotion in your body and
Mm-hmm.
being present with it. But there's so much distraction for us to do that. Like I
Yeah.
think now more than ever, there's so many distractions from
Yeah.
being with our emotions. Like, oh, I'm sad. Let me just get on
Yeah.
my phone and order something from Amazon, or, you know, or let me just put on a podcast, or let me just put on a meditation. It's like or whatever, like even these
Mm-hmm.
things that seem healthy, like, let me just go to my phone or whatever. It's like, well, let's just pause and
Right.
breathe into what we're feeling and, you know, be with what's there so that it can express. And sometimes people think emotional expression is like, well, I need to go like tell somebody how mad they made me, or I need to go, you know, cry into my pillow. And like, those aren't necessarily bad things, but expression, when I talk about expression, I mean like thinking of emotion as a wave. It rises into our awareness, it crests, and then it falls away. And that's like, we can just let
Mm-hmm.
that happen throughout the day of like just noticing, oh, I'm feeling a little anxious. Oh,
Mm-hmm.
it's in my heart. My heart feels like it's beating really fast. Let me just breathe with this. And then,
Mm-hmm.
it subsides, right? And it might come back again, you know, throughout the day. But I think we're just so programmed to like when that anxiety comes up, I
Mm-hmm.
need to make it go away, right? I need to fix it. So it's a more sort of like a yin way of being
Right.
with ourselves.
And when you're reprogramming, like when you're working with a client, you're sensing something in their field and you're, reprogramming it or retuning it. What is the chance of that reverting? So, obviously there's something stored. I'll say a trauma as an example, a stored trauma that has been held within their field and perhaps is showing up somewhere in their body, and you're now reprogramming the energy, the awareness around that trauma. Can that be recreated? Or once you've gone in there and sort of smoothed that out and made it more coherent, is it now reprogrammed to the point where it's not going to revert once the session's done?
No, it can definitely revert, but usually not to the degree that it was before tuning. So, what we do, it's kind of like we're neutralizing the charge. So, let's just say this thing at age 5 is like supercharged. It's been charged for a really long time. It just draws energy. So, it's like all of our perceptions and experiences are kind of informed by that one experience, like how we see the world, right? And so when we neutralize the charge there by we're untangling waveforms, we're bringing light back into the body, back into flow. There's more space there for new neural pathways to start to develop. And so we don't so immediately go to that 5-year-old experience. But we can, like, it's not that we don't. Like, we can go back there and refer to that because it's kind of like, you know, especially depending on the experience. If something was really traumatic for somebody, kind of see it as like a permanent wrinkle in the field where energy can get kind of stuck, gather there pretty easily. So that's why, you know, it is important to receive, you know, regular biofield tuning sessions, in my opinion, to just kind of keep things moving. But yeah, so I think we can revert, we can be like triggered back to those experiences and that information, but not to the degree usually that we once were.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think also just to follow up on what you were initially saying, I think, that's why other mindfulness, I'll use that for lack of a better way to describe them, but other practices where you're doing some deeper inner work and developing some self-awareness, and even, a practice of solitude where, yeah, you're not, reaching for your phone, reaching for a podcast, reaching for a meditation, and you're actually just really sitting with yourself. Those things are so important
Mm-hmm.
because, there's no one thing that's just going to fix you. Even this, that this is
Right.
a really powerful tool
Right.
to help, but there is nothing that just takes
Yep.
takes all of your stuff away. And there's nobody waving a magic wand here that can do that. But the biofield tuning and the tuning forks are a tool that can prove to kind of get you closer to probably the place that we all want to be, which is, very well aligned and feeling good, feeling like we've got a lot of energy, and maybe even feeling like we're connected to, a higher power, or feeling like we're tapping into our own divinity. I think those are really beautiful outcomes of having this work done. But it does require, some self-reflection and some self-awareness.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm glad you mentioned that. Yeah, we see biofield tuning as a multi-modality approach. So it's not just, a cure-all or like a one and done thing. It's really important for, I think, for anybody, but especially those of us who are serving others, to really have a fully stocked toolbox of, different practices that we have for ourselves, but also, having work
Mhm.
done by others, like body work and coaching, therapy, biofield tuning, whatever is out there that can, support you where you are and help you come into more alignment.
And can I ask you personally, what do you do? You're a practitioner and you're in other people's fields. And so what does that look like for you as far as, clearing your own field, or making sure that, things aren't stuck to you?
Yeah, moving my body is number one. Definitely number one. I make sure I'm out and not just moving my body, but out
Mhm.
in the woods moving my body. So we're fortunate enough to live close to some trails. So I'm out on the trails every day in nature,
Yeah.
beautiful views. So that's one thing. Regular baths. I love baths because it's just time for me to be with myself. I did have a yoga practice that I'm working to get back to. That was, I
Yeah.
mean, I love yoga. Yoga is, oh my gosh, it's just a little bit of
Yeah.
everything for me. And then receiving from other practitioners, massage. I was just receiving, I forget what it's called, but I just got a session from a practitioner yesterday. And it was so amazing. Like, she was so gentle. I wish I knew what it was so I could actually, give it a shout out. Give her a shout out. She's here in my town. She
Okay.
doesn't do remote stuff, but it was so beautiful and gentle, and just to have somebody else be with my body while I'm with my body and pay attention to it and notice it. It's that in
Yeah.
itself is so healing. And then yeah, I get regular biofield tuning sessions too, in person and
Yeah, no,
remote.
that all of that sounds necessary. I would think doing what you're doing. And I agree that, when you're allowing yourself to be with somebody else who you trust to work with your body, there's something that just feels somewhat freeing about that. Like, you can surrender a little bit, and
Yeah.
because you're almost forced to relax. Like, if you're really going to let somebody do what it is they need to do, you have to relax. And I think just doing that gives
Yep.
you like a different sense of appreciation and awareness of your body.
Absolutely. Yeah. Even in that session yesterday, I noticed myself holding resistance and holding, and you're so right. Like, I was like, okay, like we have to relax and let go so she can do her work, right? But I was like, that's so interesting
Hmm.
that I'm wanting to guard and hold, and what's that about? And I didn't try to figure it out. I was like, doesn't matter what it's about, just
Let her do her
release.
thing.
Yeah. Yeah, I think we can get really caught up in the
Yeah,
overthinking of like, why am I doing this? Why is my shoulder, so far forward? And why am I holding this tension? And then it's just like ultimately, yeah, it's nice to have awareness, but at the end
yeah.
of the day, it doesn't matter. Just notice that you're
Release it.
holding and then
Yeah,
release and see what that
yeah.
feels like.
And then from a very practical question, I suppose, is we've talked a lot about the tuning forks that you use, but and I have the Biofield tuning forks, but what is the difference, or is there a difference between the tuning forks that you use, like the specifically Biofield tuning forks versus other tuning forks that you could buy elsewhere?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So, these tuning forks are made with a specific alloy. Eileen was using just like, standard market tuning forks before working in the field. But because we are working in the biofield with these tuning forks, we're working with entropy. And so the forks kept breaking. And so she was like, this is ridiculous. I've spent so much money on forks. Like, I need someone to help me create a fork that can withstand the entropy in biofield tuning sessions. And so she partnered with, I think it's MetaVibe, and they manufactured her specific biofield tuning forks. So they're much less likely to break. I think I've had this one for 5 or 6 years. And then the one I had that before that was like 4 years. So they do still, that we call them we have blown tuning forks. And what happens is they develop little micro
Yeah.
fractures in them. And it's just from being in stagnant energy, day in and
That's
day out.
amazing. These are metal tuning
So I
forks
know.
and they crack because of
Yep.
people's energetic field. Like that's amazing.
Yep. But these ones, I mean, like I said, I've had this one for years and years. So yeah, she did a good job kind of explaining
Mhm.
exactly what was needed in order to have tools that
Yeah, and with
last.
the kits that you can buy, there are obviously different frequencies to the different tuning forks. How for somebody who's looking to maybe get into it or is looking to take a course or maybe even considering eventually one day becoming a practitioner, what would you say would be as far as these are the tuning forks that would be necessary for you to get started? What would your recommendation be?
Well, for personal use, do I have it with me? I don't. Would be the sonic slider tuning fork. It is a smaller version of this fork. This is a weighted tuning fork, and it has barrels on the ends of the tines. So the tuning forks without barrels, you can hear the tone of the forks, quite like you hear all the overtones and undertones. But this one is great because it sends vibration in through the
Okay.
handle of the fork. And so you can use it all over your body, like just sending vibration into your body, breaking up areas of tension and resistance in the body. And then you can also use it in the biofield. It vibrates in the field and it does break up tension and resistance. You just can't really hear it. But I think for most people, that's not a
Mhm.
problem that you can't hear it because, like I said, it is usually the pathway that
Right.
comes last for people. So this is it's like a two-in-one, right? So you can use it on your body and in the field. The unweighted tuning fork you don't use on the
Okay.
body, you just use on the field. And so if someone wanted to use a weighted fork on their body, they just place the handle
Okay.
there and let that penetrate their bones and their viscera and the tissue there. So, but if you wanted to start some field combing, working in the biofield, and you want the sounds, the 174 hertz
Mhm.
is the way to go. And that's because this one produces the widest range of midtones and overtones and undertones. So you really do get the most
Okay.
information. And for the weighted fork, you just tap it on your hand, but or your hip, or you can tap it on your body. But you need an activator with the
Okay.
174 hertz. And so Eileen discovered that a hockey puck has been the most useful and produces the best tone. And I don't know if you'll be able to hear it if I have my noise
Oh, yeah.
canceling on.
Yeah.
Oh, you can? Okay, good. My fan is
Okay.
on too, so it kind of like
No, it sounds
throws
really
the
good. I
sound
can hear it.
around. So, okay. Yeah, so just hitting it on the corner of a hockey puck
Wow.
there. Yeah, got a little
Yeah.
sports in biofield tuning. And the reason why the hockey puck works is because it has a nice balance ratio of
Okay.
plastic and rubber versus just like rubber activators. You don't get such a clear activation. It sounds
Right.
dull and muffled. So you get a little bit of more clarity with a little bit of the
Okay.
plastic in the
Yeah,
puck.
that all makes sense. I have all of those things, so I should
Yeah.
start. I'm re-inspired to start using them
Yay!
again.
Yeah, and you can tune your plants, you can tune pets. Like, plants have biofields, pets, anything that's living has a biofield. So it's a fun thing to do.
And just now when you tapped it, it was very clear or crisp sounding. If you were to tap it and put it in the field of, say a plant, and there was something going on with that plant, like it needed to be watered, as an example, you would hear it would sound less crisp, correct? Like you'd hear almost like a little bit more of like a wobble to the sound. Is that a good way to describe it?
Yeah, yep. You might hear a wobble to it. You might hear kind of more if something's depleted, like if the plant doesn't have enough water or a person doesn't have enough energy, you might get more of those undertones because there's like a heavier, more like, and also like a more closed
Okay.
quality to the tone too. So it doesn't sound like full and vibrant like a
Hmm.
like the fork would just when you're activating it, not in a field
Right.
of someone who's
Yeah.
depleted.
Well, Jillian, is there anything else that you would like to share? I want to be respectful of your time, and we're just hitting the 1 hour mark right now, but I feel like I could talk to you for hours because I have lots of questions. But is there anything that you would really like to share or impart on anyone listening about biofield tuning and what your experience has been, or, the experience of other people you've worked with?
No, except for that if you're curious about it, give it a try. Usually I ask people, or when people are asking me about biofield tuning and I'm explaining it, they're like, okay, but I just don't get it really. I'm like, okay, well,
Yeah.
let's have you experience it because then you'll understand it on a different level. Maybe not how it works, but you'll understand, what it can do for you and
Hmm.
how it can make you feel, as an individual. So yeah, give it a whirl. There's practitioners everywhere, all over the world. So if you go to biofieldtuning.com and you look at their practitioner directory, you can search your region in the world and your country and state. And then I do biofield tuning sessions remotely and in person, but they can find me at jillianfaldmo.com. And then if you're interested in taking a class, we'd love to have you too. I teach, there's 10 of us teachers who teach, so I teach some of the classes. And I'd love to have you in class, and you can go to biofieldtuning.com to look at those opportunities
Thank you.
too.
Yeah, that's awesome. And very exciting for me because, as I said, when I opened this up, I've now, in the last few weeks, I've had a few experiences where somebody's either mentioned biofield tuning to me or talked about, signing up for a session, or asked about the tuning fork. So I just feel like at this particular time, for whatever reason, it's really come into my life a few times now. And so, yeah, I think that's maybe a sign that I should probably pick up where I left off and get back into it. And so I think your resources, and I'll link everything that you mentioned, but your resources are coming to me in a very timely place right now.
Awesome, Nirvani. We'd love to have you in the class.
Yeah, I would love to take a class. That's initially why I bought the set. So, but at the time, you had mentioned that it's become quite popular, or you've now met a lot of people who are at least aware of it. I was looking at an online course, and they were all sold out. So just to speak to, the popularity of it. So I'll have to get back on the site and take a look.
Yeah, there should be some more classes available
Yeah.
soon. Anyway. Oh, I was going to say one more thing. Oh, I always think when something, comes in 3 times, it's time to take some action. So it happens in life, but it also happens in biofield
Oh,
tuning
yeah.
sessions as a practitioner of like when, you keep hearing the song or the thought just keeps coming in and you can't, figure out why was this random thought and is it mine or is it in the field? And if it's 3 times and you're like, okay,
Yeah.
I must share this. And of course it
Yeah.
resonates
Yeah,
every
that's a good
time.
reminder actually, because I also have that, I used to, I think, more strictly kind of like hold on to this idea that if it shows up in your life 3 times, you should maybe follow it. So yeah, I think this
Yeah.
is an example
Yeah.
of that.
Yay. Well, thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it. It was nice to be with you today.
Yeah, this was awesome. And thank you for your time and sharing your expertise as a practitioner and just being so open to talk about this and give a little bit of context to what it is and why it is powerful and how it can be helpful.
Awesome. If anybody has any questions, feel free to reach out to me if I didn't make something clear or if there's just more curiosity. I'm happy to help answer more questions. So, and that goes for you too,
Thank
Nirvana,
you.
of course.
Yeah, that's awesome. Thank you, Jillian.